Should I stay or should I go? I'm not sure how many modern day college football players are listening to the Clash in 2025, but a lot of Texas Longhorns are asking themselves that question. Should I stay at Texas or should I go to the NFL drafts? And these decisions will have a major impact on the future of Texas Longhorn football. What's up, guys and gals? Welcome in to another edition of the BK Show right here on YouTube. This is your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content. Appreciate y'all tuning in. If you're watching this live, thank you very much. If you're watching this after it's been posted, thank you very much. Appreciate the early love and support on this channel. Just a week and a half in, already more than 600 subscribers on YouTube. Help us get to 1,000. Drop a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Make sure that notification bell is turned on so you always know when we're posting new content here on the BK Show. Going to do more live content starting this week and going to try to find a regular time for these live streams on the BK Show. I'd rock with 4:30 this week, and then hopefully we find something consistent moving forward. But today, you see the title, you heard the intro. We're talking about some Texas Longhorns with some big decisions to make. A bunch of Longhorns have already made their decisions, and they've already announced that they are heading to the NFL draft. A couple of surprises, but most of the guys who have declared were guys that I think every Texas fan expected to declare, but still a number more big decisions left on the horizon that will impact the 2025 Texas football season. And a reminder, the deadline for these Texas players to declare is the 15th. That's 2 days from now, this Wednesday. So we'll know in a couple of days who's off to the NFL and who is returning to Austin for at least one more season. Of course, if you're live, you don't need this information, but if you're watching after the fact, it's about 4:30 on Monday. So if you're watching this late, some of this information may have changed, but here's what we know as of now. Kelvin Banks, Hayden Connor, Jaden Blue, Gavin Holmes, Matthew Golden, Andrew McCuba, Vernon Broughton, Jake Majors. Those are the names of Longhorns who have already announced their intentions of heading to the NFL draft. Of course, Texas had 11 players selected in the 2024 draft. They might get close to that number. Hell, there's a chance they surpass that number here in 2025. Some of those names, no surprise. Starting with Kelvin Banks. What a career. And I'd like to give a shout out to Mario Cristobal, because if Mario Cristobal didn't leave Oregon to take the job at Miami 3 years ago, then Kelvin Banks would have never committed to the University of Texas. Remember, Kelvin Banks, even though he's a Texas kid, was committed to Oregon for a long time. Cristobal takes the Miami job. Texas, shout out to the Pancake Fund as well, opens up the pocketbooks a little bit, and they're able to keep Kelvin Banks here in the state of Texas. But honestly, if Mario Cristobal doesn't leave Oregon, I don't think we're talking about Kelvin Banks as a Longhorn. So want to give that dude some love for taking that gig at the U and opening up the possibility of Kelvin Banks coming to the University of Texas. And what a tremendous, tremendous career that he had here in Austin, winning the Outland Trophy this year, winning the Lombardi Trophy this year, a 3-year starter for Texas. I mean, you can go back to the second game of his career, week 2 against Alabama, the game in Austin that Texas lost in the final minute. Kelvin Banks against Will Anderson, who is a beast for the Houston Texans, and Dallas Turner, who had a great rookie year of the NFL. Kelvin Banks held his own against those guys. And it's like, oh my God, this is this guy's second collegiate game, and he's doing this against them. And really from that moment on, it was to the moon for Kelvin Banks. He got better every single year, a huge part of Texas's offensive turnaround. And I think every Longhorn fan knows this stat. It's been more than 20 years since UT has had an offensive lineman selected in the first round of the NFL draft. You got to go all the way back to Mike Williams. No, not that Mike Williams. No, not that Mike Williams. That Mike Williams. The last time Texas had an O-lineman drafted in the first round. Kelvin Banks obviously going to put an end to that drought here in a couple of months. I think he's going to be the first O-lineman selected. He's going to be a top 10 pick. I think there's a chance he's a top 5 pick. But a shout out to Kelvin Banks. He's been getting all sorts of love since he made his announcement over the weekend, and he deserves it. What a tremendous player. What a tremendous kid. Phenomenal story as well. A true embodiment of what it means to be a Texas Longhorn. Shout out to Kelvin Banks. He's going to be tough to replace. Longhorn in Omaha with an early comment, going to miss Matthew Golden. Yeah, no surprise. This one happened earlier today. Matthew Golden was the Adonai Mitchell of this year's team. Just a godsend for this Texas wide receiver room. Led the Longhorns with 58 catches, 987 yards, and 9 touchdowns, averaged 17 yards per catch. I don't want to say he was an afterthought, but you look at Isaiah Bond, right? He was the transfer receiver that everybody thought was going to make the biggest impact here in Austin. And it wasn't him. It was Matthew Golden. And credit the Texas coaching staff. They put a full court press on Matthew Golden. And look, this guy was a pretty highly touted recruit. He's one of the highest graded recruits that the University of Houston ever had, but he wasn't talked about a ton in college because he played at Houston and Houston wasn't doing a whole lot. And he didn't have the craziest numbers during his time at UH. Still, Texas loved what they saw from him. They wanted him out of high school. They went after him even harder in the transfer portal. They get him to come to Texas, and he was huge for this Longhorn offense. Sucks that he missed 2.5 quarters in that Cotton Bowl loss to Ohio State because, well, we know how much of a difference maker he was for Texas all year long. But when he did play, he made a difference against the Buckeyes. How about that one-handed grab that he made in the first quarter on Texas's first possession on a big third down early on against OSU? Matthew Golden, he's got stick 'em on those hands. That guy as sure-handed as it gets. Curious where he goes in the draft. I think he's going to be a second rounder. I don't think he'll make it into day one. You know, he's 6 feet, 195, doesn't have that stereotypical size or strength, and he's not the fastest guy in the world. But to put up the numbers that he put up in the SEC and then to do what he did against Ohio State, I mean, this guy was awesome. And he made himself some money, especially with the way that he played in the second half of the year and into the postseason as well. So, yeah, I know Texas fans were hoping Matthew Golden would come back for one more year, but it would have been foolish for him to do so. Of course, I wanted it too, but the iron is hot for Matthew Golden. It's not a whole lot he could have done to improve his draft stock if he did return for one more season. So congrats to him. Only 1 year in Austin, but like A.D. Mitchell, he became a fan favorite early on, and he meant so much to this Texas team. A couple of other guys, and by the way, hit us up. The comment line is rocking and rolling if you're watching this live. Hit the live chat if you're watching this after the fact. Hit me in the comments below your thoughts on some of these decisions and some of the impending decisions for these Texas players. Joshua asks, Isaiah Bond coming back. I haven't seen anything official about Isaiah Bond. If I missed something, y'all let me know. If I had to put money on it, I would say Isaiah Bond is gone. You know, this was not the season Isaiah Bond wanted. This was not the season I think any Texas fan wanted. This was not the season that the Texas coaching staff had in mind for Isaiah Bond. Obviously, injuries, I think, played a part of that. But man, Isaiah Bond kind of a non-factor down the stretch. And I think the lasting memory that Longhorn fans may have of Isaiah Bond, assuming he does not return in 2025, is that drop. Third down, wide open in the middle of the field. For some reason, he decides to jump for the football. And he jumps and doesn't make the catch. And I think there was only 2 catches for Isaiah Bond in the postseason. Obviously missed the first round game against Clemson, but he just wasn't the difference maker that we thought he would be. Again, I think that ankle injury, when you're talking about a guy with that type of speed, he obviously needs to be healthy to utilize that speed to its full potential. And I think just him getting banged up against OU and then re-aggravating that injury in the SEC championship against Georgia, that didn't help his cause. So would I take Isaiah Bond back? Absolutely. I think the coaching staff would take Isaiah Bond back if he wanted to return. But I think his mind was made up before the season that this was going to be a one-and-done deal in Austin. And even though his draft stock may have taken a hit, I still think he's going to go pro. And if he doesn't, I think he'd hit the portal. It just didn't quite work out for him at Texas. So what I've heard behind the scenes is that more than likely Isaiah Bond is off to the NFL. This is a guy that had first-round grades going into the season. And really, you looked at mock drafts in the first 2 months of the college football season, and Isaiah Bond was a first-rounder in most of them. I don't know how far he falls. I think that speed is going to play. I don't think he's going to be Xavier Worthy fast at the combine, but he's got a chance to be a high 4.2, low 4.3 guy, and speed kills. And if you can impress at the Underwear Olympics, then teams are going to fall in love with you. So I think there's a chance Isaiah Bond is still a day 2 pick, despite the lack of production and really the lack of production down the stretch. 34 catches, 540 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Just unfortunately, more of a decoy than anything else for Texas in this college football playoff. He's a guy with a big decision to make. I want to give a few more thoughts on some guys who have already made their decisions. Jaden Blue, that's sort of a controversial one amongst Longhorn fans everywhere. Jaden Blue, another guy who didn't have the season that I think we wanted him to have, right? Once CJ Baxter got hurt in training camp, I bring this up all of the time, and I think it's worth bringing up all of the time. Jaden Blue was the Vegas favorite to lead the SEC in rushing this season. Like, once CJ Baxter got hurt, everyone's like, okay, Jaden Blue's the guy. And Steve Sarkisian has this long stretch of 1,000-yard rushers. And we saw Jaden Blue kind of take off once Jonathan Brooks got hurt at the end of the 2023 season. It just felt like the stars were aligning for Jaden Blue to have a massive season. And I think he would have if he didn't fumble the ball as much as he did. Fumbleitis became a huge problem for Jaden Blue, and it showed up way too often this season. And I think he fell out of favor with this coaching staff because of it. Now, it's not like he didn't play at all. I mean, he scored both touchdowns for Texas against Ohio State, and I would have liked to have seen him play a little bit more against the Buckeyes. But the fumbling issues, look, NFL teams value the football just as much as college teams do. If Jaden Blue can't get that stuff figured out, then his career at the next level is not going to be a long one. But a similar conversation to Isaiah Bond, speed kills. I mean, Ohio State's got maybe the fastest defense in the country, and Jaden Blue on 2 wheel routes ran by everybody on that Buckeyes defense. He's a great receiving threat out of the backfield. He's a guy that you can get the ball to in space, and he'll make some things happen. You know, I had a couple of friends reach out yesterday because Jaden Blue made his announcement yesterday, and they're like, what is he doing? He's not going to get drafted. It'll be a UDFA. What a horrible decision. And I'm thinking, guys, Keelan Robinson got drafted out of Texas last year. Keelan Robinson got way less run than Jaden Blue. He didn't have the potential that I think Jaden Blue has. And I get it. Keelan Robinson, special teams ace. I don't want to knock on him at all. Really loved having that guy in Austin. But he wasn't the type of player, the type of talent, the type of potential that Jaden Blue is. So if Keelan Robinson can get drafted, yeah, you can bet your ass that Jaden Blue is going to get drafted by somebody. And once again, another guy who I think can stand out at the combine here in a couple of months. I think Jaden Blue might be a 3rd-round pick. I think right now, if you ask me what round he'd go in, I'd say 4th round. And it sucks because I think if Jaden Blue returned for another year and figured out those fumbling issues and put up even better stats next year than he did this year, I think he could be a 2nd-rounder and maybe a 1st-rounder. But he's going to get drafted. And I would have loved for him to return one more year and develop a little bit more with Tashard Choice and Steve Sarkisian. But I understand the decision. And Jaden Blue was a guy all offseason long who was talking about this being a contract year for him, right? He basically told everybody before the season started that this is it. This is going to be his final season at Texas. And even though it didn't go the way that he had hoped and we had all hoped, I think Jaden Blue's mind was kind of made up that he was going to hit the NFL as soon as he could. And you got to remember, the shelf lives of running backs is a lot shorter than the shelf lives of every other position in the league. Those guys only have a limited number of hits they could take. And I don't get too upset. I get upset because I root for Texas and I want Jaden Blue to help Texas, but I don't get too upset when a running back decides to go pro because, well, he knows he might only have 4, 5, 6, 7 years in the league. Unless you're Derrick Henry or Adrian Peterson or one of those dudes that could just give Father Time the middle finger, more than likely your career in the league is not going to be that long. So go take advantage while you can. And Jaden Blue is doing that. 730 rushing yards, 368 receiving yards. Led Texas with 14 touchdowns. I keep calling this season a bit underwhelming for him, but outside of Quinn Ewers, this passing touchdowns, Jaden Blue had the most touchdowns of anybody on the team. A big threat. I hate that the fumbling problem showed up because I feel like he could have had an even better season, and that would have made the Texas offense that much more difficult to stop. So Jaden Blue is one that hurts. No surprise with Andrew Makuba. No surprise with Vernon Broughton. No surprise with Jake Majors. All of those decisions have come down within the last few hours. Vernon Broughton, or some thought that maybe he'd return to Texas for another year, but that guy put together a great season. And I think, like, you're starting to see, and you saw it last year with guys like Keelan Robinson getting drafted. Jordan Whittington, a lot of people thought he was going to be a UDFA. He goes in the 6th round, like T'Vondre Sweat. All of the pre-draft stuff, all the rumors about him, people thought maybe he'd fall far in the draft. That guy ended up being a top 40 pick. Texas is garnering that respect from the NFL, where guys are going to get drafted higher because they're at Texas. For years, it was the opposite. Like, end of Mac, but really Charlie and Tom Herman. Like, there are so many guys that, they played at Texas, so I don't know if we trust that they've been developed, right? Look at a guy like Poona Ford. That guy is still a beast in the NFL. Was he drafted at all? Like, I get he's a little bit undersized, but like, that guy just was really good at Texas, has been really good in the league, but late day 3 pick or undrafted. I don't know why I can't remember. Guys like Malcolm Roach. I mean, there are plenty of examples of Texas during the dozen years of suck from 2010 to 2022 where the NFL was like, no, we don't want to take you. You played at Texas. Bad coaching, bad development. We don't want any part of that. Now it's the opposite. Now it's like, oh shit, PK was their coach. Steve Sarkisian was their coach. Yeah, I'm going to take a flyer on that guy. And you look at a guy like Jordan Whittington, 6th round pick, made an impact this year for the LA Rams. We'll see if he does something tonight in the Rams playoff game against the Vikings, right? Like, Texas has completely turned the narrative on what people think of their players coming out of school. So all of that to say, yeah, no surprise Vernon Broughton is leaving. I think the fact that he played at Texas and made the impact he did at Texas and in the SEC and on a team that made it all the way to the Final Four of the college football playoff, yeah, Vernon Broughton's going pro. Also, he's got a wife. He's got a kid on the way. I get it. Texas can pay. The NIL money here is nice, and I'm sure Vernon Broughton made some good cash this year. But, yeah, go to the NFL, man. You've earned it. We would love to have him back at Texas, but this one can't come as any surprise. Thank you, CB. Yeah, Poona Ford, UDFA. My initial thought was right on that. So those are the guys who have decided to this point. Once again, Kelvin Banks, Hayden Connor, Jaden Blue, Gavin Holmes, Matthew Golden, Andrew Makuba, Vernon Broughton, and Jake Majors. They've all announced their intentions to go to the NFL. And there are some other key contributors who have yet to decide, or at least announce their decisions. One of them is Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn Ewers is gone. I think that's what the program expects. I think that's what most of us expect at this point. Look, there's no way Quinn Ewers is back at Texas. I think the two choices are go pro or hit the portal and go play college football for one more season. I would put it at 98% confidence that Quinn is off to the league. And the other 2% will be he hits the portal and decides to go somewhere else. Most of these guys, I think Texas would welcome back with open arms. As much as Quinn meant to the program and as much as Steve Sarkisian clearly loved Quinn Ewers, as much as I loved Quinn Ewers, I think Texas is ready to begin the Arch Manning era. I think Quinn knows that. I think everybody knows that. The writing's on the wall that you don't have to worry about number 3 returning for one more season. I know for some of y'all, that'd be the worst thing to ever happen to you, which we're not going to get into that discussion today. But Quinn Ewers still has not publicly announced his decision. I fully expect him to head to the league. And as CB says, yeah, Quinn told Pete Thamel before the game he was going. I think that's been the behind the scenes expectation for a while now. So won't spend too much time talking about Quinn. Cam Williams. Cam Williams is an interesting one, right? He had a horrible game against Ohio State. Now, dealing with an injury, didn't play against Arizona State, so he wasn't 100%. Also dealing with Jack Sawyer, who's a monster, and that guy is going to live in Texas's head rent-free for a long, long time. And that guy's a monster. There weren't a lot of tackles in college football that handled Jack Sawyer this year. But it was a rough showing for Cam Williams. And obviously on 4th down and goal, that Jack Sawyer strip sack fumble, it was Cam Williams who got beat right away. and allow Jack Sawyer basically a free run to do what he did on what basically was the last meaningful play of that football game. Cam Williams, I think, needs another year in college football, but going back to the mock drafts, and maybe things have changed since that Cotton Bowl, but for the last 2 months, just about every mock you looked at had Cam going in the first round. Like not Kelvin Banks high, but like mid to late first round. And that always surprised me. Now, Cam Williams is huge. He's got that stereotypical NFL size and arm length and strength. So I get, and look, the NFL draft is a lot about potential, right? What can you be in this league? Not always what you were in college. But I think Cam Williams needs another year of development in college football. I think if he returns to Texas, he could be the Kelvin Banks of the 2026 NFL draft. Now, I think Cam would stay at right tackle. Left tackles usually go higher, so maybe Cam won't go as high as Kelvin Banks. But in terms of in that discussion as the first offensive lineman off the board, I think Cam Williams could be that guy next year if he decides to run it back in Austin for one more season. So it'll be an interesting decision. Heard a source say that Cam's not the biggest fan of school. Can't knock him. I wasn't the biggest fan of school. And that's part of the decision. Yeah, I'm sure Cam Williams can get some great tutors at Texas, and I hope Texas is doing whatever they can to make sure Cam Williams has the academic help he needs to try to convince him to stay in the ATX. But that might be a factor in Cam's decision. I think he's considering, and it's fair that he's considering. Once again, when people think he might be a first-round pick, you can't get any higher than that. But I really think Cam Williams can use another year in college. And selfishly speaking, I want him to use another year in college. Did he have problems this year? Yeah, he's got to clean up the penalties. He's got to improve a little bit with his bend. There's room for improvement there, absolutely. But do I think he'd be one of the best players on this Texas team if he returned in 2025? Yeah, 100%. He showed me enough this year that he can be a difference maker on this offensive line. You're already losing your left tackle. You're already losing your left guard. You're already losing your center. We'll see what DJ Campbell does. You don't want to lose at least 80% of your starting offensive line, and it could potentially be 100% of the offensive line if DJ decides to leave. So, yeah, you got Trevor Gooseby at left tackle, Cam Williams at right tackle. That instantly is one of the best tackle duos in college football, and that hopefully helps this offense be at least as good as it was, in 2025 as it was in 2024. So, yeah, I don't want Cam Williams' lasting memory as a Longhorn to be that fourth and goal play and just that game as a whole. And maybe that game did enough for NFL people to say, hey, maybe you need a little bit more time on the 40 acres. We'll see you next year. But obviously, big time decision for Cameron Williams and something that will impact the Texas offensive line and the team as a whole next year. DWD says, I hope Taaffe stays. Yeah, that's another one we've got to talk about, right? Michael Taaffe, what a story. The walk-on, the local kid turning into an All-American this season, a fan favorite. Now, not a fan favorite if you root for any other team, but if you root for Texas, Michael Taaffe, absolutely a fan favorite, and he deserves a ton of credit for this secondary's turnaround this year. Texas had one of the worst pass defenses in America a season ago, and they had a top 3 secondary in the nation this year. Obviously, Andrew Makuba and Jade Barron, those guys, and Manny Muhammad, those guys all deserve a ton of credit for that happening as well. But the steps that Michael Taaffe took from last season to this season, instrumental in the Longhorns' defensive success this year. We all saw how distraught he was walking back to the locker room on Friday. I mean, that guy bleeds burnt orange. I know a lot of people say that. That guy really does bleed burnt orange, and he was open about his one goal this season being winning a national championship for the University of Texas, and to come that close, that painfully close to getting to the title game for the second straight year, that's weighing on Michael Taaffe, and that's going to play a role in this decision. He knows how close they are, and he knows that this team's going to be pretty damn good again next season. Hell, I saw a way too early top 25 earlier today that had Texas number 1 next year. Like, even though the Longhorns are losing a lot of these guys that we're discussing here, this is going to be at worst a top 3 team in the preseason AP poll later this year. So Michael Taaffe might be like, been closed 2 years in a row. Third time's a charm. Is this the year we break through? Can Arch lead us over the hump? I think that might weigh into his decision. Now, in terms of Michael Taaffe, where he goes in the draft, I mean, he's a day 3 pick, probably a later day 3 pick. If he comes back for another season, I don't think he can really improve his stock. I don't know how much better he can play in college football than he did this year. I mean, the guy was an All-American, for Pete's sake. He was a monster, one of the highest graded defensive backs in the country. I don't know if he can do a whole lot more to get better from the 2024 that he had. And he's just got some athletic limitations. He's a wide guy, say that. He's got some athletic limitations that are going to prevent him from ever being in the first, second, third round discussion. The question is for Michael Taaffe, is there too much risk involved with returning? Risk number one, the obvious one, the risk that all of these guys have, injury. Risk number two, there's no Thorpe Award winner on this side. There's no Andrew Makuba on that side. Those guys, I mean, Jade, I think, is going to be a first-round pick. Makuba will be a day 2 pick. 2 of the best DBs in America. Those guys are off to the league. Good for them. They're going to be missed. But remember, Michael Taaffe last year, he got better from 23 to 24, but last year didn't look like a good year for him, in large part because of the guys that were around him. Now, I think the Texas secondary room is in a much better spot in 2025 than it was in 2023. But once again, you don't have the Thorpe Award winner and you don't have a beast in Andrew Makuba with all of his talent and experience playing next to you in that defensive backfield. It means you got to carry a bigger load in 2025. And if the guys around you aren't up to par, then you might look a little bit worse. So that's another thing that Michael Taaffe has to consider, right? Major risk involved with his decision. I would lean that he's going to stay. I don't have any intel on that. I really don't. I think he probably should leave, if we're being completely honest. But just with Michael Taaffe caring about Texas as much as he does, if I had to put money on it, it wouldn't be a lot of money. But I'd say Michael Taaffe runs it back in Austin for one more year, and he posts some badass Instagram video where he announces that he's returning, and every Texas fan goes nuts, and every Texas hater loses their mind. That's a big one. Couple more to get into. We talked about DJ Campbell a little bit earlier. I think he should stay. I think he will stay. Former 5-star recruit. He would be drafted if he left, but he's another guy who I think can improve his draft stock if he decides to return for one more season. And then Trey Moore is an interesting one. Trey Moore, the UTSA transfer, had a horrible first half of the season, really put things together down the stretch, was a big factor on this Texas defensive front late in the regular season and into the postseason. He went from like a major disappointment to, okay, we'd love to have this dude back for one more year. Another one of those guys that I think would be drafted if he left. But I think he could use one more year at Texas. And if he puts together a full season like he did in the second half this year, then first round might be a stretch, but day 2 pick, could that happen for Trey Moore? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he has like the 14.5 sacks that he had at UTSA. Obviously, the SEC a little bit tougher than the ACC that he was playing in at Texas San Antonio. But if he is, an 8, 9, 10 sack guy next year, then yeah, I think day 2 could be in the cards for Trey Moore. So that's one where Texas is probably going to have a nice NIL package. I think Texas already gave him a pretty sweet deal to come here in the first place in the transfer portal. I think if the Longhorns want to keep him for a second year, going to have to pony up a little bit of cash too. But I think Trey Moore is one of those guys that he could make more money next year at Texas than he would in the league. And then he can improve his draft stock to obviously ensure that he makes more money when he gets to the league than he would if he left right now. I have no idea if that makes sense. That felt like gibberish right there. But I think that's it. That's just about everybody on my list. Maybe there's a name or two that we're forgetting. Somebody asked about Alfred Collins. I don't think Alfred Collins can come back. He hasn't posted anything on social media announcing that he is going to the league, but I'm pretty sure Alfred Collins is out of eligibility with the whole COVID eligibility thing. Hell, with Diego Pavia suing the NC2A to get a 15th year in college. I don't know who can play and who has to go at this point. but I'm pretty sure Alfred Collins has to go. And he's another guy that even if he could return, he should go because he made himself some money. Took a while for him to be the player that we wanted him to be coming out of Bastrop. But, man, he was a monster on that Texas defensive line. I mean, he and Broughton replacing T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy the way that they did. That was a huge question for all of us in the offseason. And that question was answered pretty quickly because those two guys were as good as they were. Obviously, shout out to Bill Norton and Jermaine Lole and Tia Savea as well. Those guys were important on that interior defensive line. But Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, tip of the cap. The Horns needed those dudes to step up in their final years, and they absolutely stepped up in the final years. All right, that might do it for this one. If you got some questions, we'll take a few more questions before we get out of here. Reminder, guys, please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and spread the word to friends and family in Longhorn Nation. Let them know that this is the place they need to be to get their Texas Longhorn content. Tons of great guests. We'll have plenty of recruiting conversations, plenty of off-season conversations, plenty of Texas basketball, Texas baseball, Texas volleyball, other sports as well. We're talking all things Longhorns right here on the BK Show. Texas Transplant says, although it was a heartbreaker and some of the play calling was garbage, I'm proud that my Longhorns proved Ohio State to be mortal. We shall have our revenge in Columbus. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing game. I think it'll be Texas potentially ranked number 1 in the country going on the road to Ohio State, who I think is going to win it all 1 week from tonight. So it'll be Texas against the defending national champions. Texas went on the road against the defending champs this year and won. I think Ohio State will be a little tougher test than Michigan was at the start of this season. But, man, the storylines leading up to that one, the Longhorns looking for some revenge. And I'm proud of Texas this year, guys. Like, there were a lot of doubters, myself included. I thought Texas was going to go 9-3 this year. I thought they lost too much. 11 players drafted in 2024. I just didn't think this program was in a spot to where they can withstand all of those losses and still be as good as they were a season ago. They proved me wrong. So I don't know what my record projection is going to be for Texas in 2025. We got a long way to go. Got to see what this roster looks like. Got to see what everybody else's roster looks like too. But I can tell you, I'm picking Texas to make the 12-team playoff for sure. It's great to see. That's what Ohio State does. That's what Georgia does. That's what Nick Saban, Alabama does. They lose 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players to the league every single season, and they're right back in the thick of things the following year. Texas, the only team in the country to make the playoff in back-to-back seasons, the only team in the country to make the Final Four, obviously, in back-to-back seasons. You should be very proud of what this team accomplished and be very excited about the future. And by the way, the Longhorns, 4 straight top 5 recruiting classes and the number 1 class in 2025. So a lot of talent is leaving, but a lot of talent is coming in as well. And that's big time. That means this Texas team isn't going anywhere. Zeb asks, who will Arch's backup be just in case of an injury? Yeah, I think it'll be Trey Owens. Could Texas go out there and maybe look at a veteran in the transfer portal to be Arch Manning's backup? Yeah, that's a possibility. If they could get somebody with a lot of experience who would agree to be on the bench, then okay. But as of right now, Trey Owens is that guy. That'll be an interesting storyline, though, to monitor over the next couple of weeks. And look, Texas, they brought in a few portal players to this point. I think we're about to hear a lot more rumors about who Texas is targeting in the portal now that the season is over. Texas hasn't brought in a lot of players in the portal. I think they might be dead last or second to last in the SEC in terms of transfer portal additions. I think that's due in large part to the fact that Texas was still playing. They were the last SEC team left. I think now this coaching staff will go full court press on attacking their biggest needs in the portal. We'll see if quarterback, I don't think it's one of their biggest needs, but we'll see if they consider that a need. DWD says, what grade do you think Blue received to announce leaving for the league? I don't know. Day 2, maybe early day 3. Like he's one of those guys that, once again, I think if he came back to Texas for another season, he could improve his draft stock, but I can't remember how it works. Like they tell you you're either a first round pick, a day 2 pick, or you go back to school for another season. I think those are the 3 sort of categories where they slot these guys. Try to do a quick Google search, but I'm not getting what I'm wanting right now. So maybe he got that day 2 pick, or maybe he's just like, I'll get drafted and I'm a running back, so I'd rather go to the league now while I still can, and I don't want to risk any sort of injury by coming back for one more season. I agree, Micah. Tight end's got to be a priority in the portal. I think Texas likes what it has. Curious to see what type of role Amari Niblack has in his second year in Austin. Jordan Washington, I know the staff really loves him, the freshman. Obviously, didn't see a lot of him this season, but I know Texas people are very excited about him. You've got Spencer Shannon in the fold as well. I think Juan Davis has to leave, so I don't want to mention him. He was a nice piece for Texas for the last couple of years. But yeah, tight end. We know Texas was going after that Purdue tight end. What was it? Max Clare was his name. He ended up transferring to, did he go to Ohio State? Yeah, I think he went to Ohio State. So there's some salt in the wound there with the Buckeyes beating Texas on that front as well. But yeah, we'll spend future videos talking about top transfer portal targets and positions of need. I think tomorrow's BK show is going to be a list of things that Texas has to clean up this offseason, like what Texas needs to do to get over this semifinal hump. Steve Sarkisian has gone from 7-win Sark to semifinal Sark. Hey, much better than 7-win Sark. He was able to get rid of that moniker. 12 wins last year, 13 this year. Now he's semifinal Sark, and he's got to find a way to lead Texas over the hump and bring a national championship back to Texas. They've been so close in each of the last 2 years, just couldn't quite get it done. Hopefully next year is the year where they finally break through. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Really do appreciate you guys and gals watching. This channel has been a lot of fun so far. The reaction has been incredible, and excited about the future. Help us get to 1,000 subs. Hoping to do that in the first month. We're already over 600 in the first week and a half. So, yeah, keep watching, keep liking, keep subscribing. Appreciate y'all's continued love and support. Remember, when you watch the BK show, you rule. See y'all tomorrow. Hook 'em.